Straight Talk audience. This is AI Gonzalo Lira, and this is Straight Talk, Cyber Cafe Edition.
Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? Professor Red Pill and Adam Maxwell from Liberty Rising Group. We're here today to talk about Trump's BBB and the double secret super probation recession that's coming, because the first recession was a secret. It wasn't they didn't let anybody know that there's an actual recession, but there was, and we'll break that down here in the Liberty Report. So if you want, go ahead, Adam, take it away.
Thank you for joining us this 11th of July, 2025. Today we're going to be dissecting the sick religion of the modern economy, which at its root is GDP worship. That we can consider the tax rate, the debt, the human cost, but it is really this single number that statists treat like a god. But what is GDP really measuring? Growth? Of what? For whom? And at what cost? We are living in a clown economy. They are gaslighting us with fake numbers, fake jobs, and fake growths. They're not measuring what really matters. So today, I'd like to think that we're going to be explaining this entire growth at any cost model built on sand. And as Josh says, how we may already be in a double dip recession.
Yeah, I mean, I predicted a hashtag collapse 2025, that we would see economic corrections in the year of 2025. We would possibly see a major conflict occur. I predicted obviously a .com bust, or like AI bubble or tech bubble that was coming. We saw that in the beginning of the year. We saw the correction in the crypto and the stock market with Trump's tariffs, and we saw a 12-day war. So I mean, I said this was all going to happen in the first quarter. You would see the first hiccup. By summer, you would see oil prices start to be affected, and the dry shipping index, which are good indicators of a recession, or that we're in recession, we're headed into recession. And I'm gonna break that down also. I've got all the slides and points that we're gonna go over. But like I said by summer we would start to see the beginnings of a major economic correction, which we've been seeing ongoing. And obviously Trump passes the BBB, or the Big Beautiful Bill. And we're seeing a spike right now in the crypto market, obviously, and we're in real time, and we're seeing, I guess there's the stock market's up as well, and this was to stimulate it. They believe that, this was going to be big, beautiful. There's going to be flowers and Boaz and all kinds of wonderful things coming out of this. And the reality is it's pumping up. It's pumping up. It's just, this is what happens when you have a merger of state and corporate powers becoming one. And they do these things in order to pump the market and crash it. And, the bankers on Wall Street are making big bucks, through these different types of schemes. As we know with Congress has made millions of dollars through alleged insider trading, pump and dumping and investing in certain key stocks and whatnot. Nancy Pelosi being one of them.
She's the greatest stock trader of our era.
The greatest stock trader of all fucking time. I mean, like, seriously, she's out competing the top traders at JP Morgan, Chase, and I mean, unbelievable, dude. She
is also an older woman. She's got maybe some experience they don't. Not sure really how else to explain this edge. Maybe some luck. Maybe she's anointed even. Like Trump survived a bullet. Nancy Pelosi. Shoe powers.
I mean, it is what it is. It's pretty obvious when you're in that position of Congress, and you're investing billions of dollars, or I guess hundreds of millions of dollars in the stock market, and making
hundreds
hand over fist, something like that. Yeah, I mean, collectively, Congress has got millions, hundreds of millions, billions maybe, billions. Plus their buddies and stuff like that. So I mean, we could be, hundreds of billions maybe.
So you described it as a pump and dump. Now, pump and dump is generally like the Trump coin, Melania coin. It's kind of much more short term, this pump and dump. What we really have is instead it's a giant financialized shell game. It's not capitalism, it's a cartel state where the Fed fuels zombie corporations to inflate asset bubbles and cause that growth. It's pump and pump and pump, and it benefits the haves, the stockholders, the military industrial complex shareholders. It benefits them at your expense. And what makes it all the more egregious is that it's done by printing money, right? All government spending, which is the driver of all this, it's not actually it's not your tax revenue going to it. They can't afford it. They print the money. That money gets printed, spent into the economy, but it's not the economy, is it? It's the coercion sector. All right? It doesn't go to a mom and pop store. It doesn't go to you. It goes to their friends whom are inflating their costs, delivering the quotas, and that's how it trickles down eventually towards you. Go ahead.
Yeah, the trickle down economics from Reagan administration, and that's basically the way the Fed works is the Fed prints the money, and then they give it to the banks through the central banking schemes. And then the banks lend that money to corporations or to micro businesses or to people. A lot of times the big banks will lend to other banks. So before the money gets inflated, it's going to these smaller banks and these regional banks, and they're paying the interest on the free money coming from the Fed, right? Or they're close to free, literally. And then they lend it out to corporations, businesses, and then private citizens. And then by the time it gets to the actual retail market, it's probably lost 80% of its value, maybe 90% of its value. Or not 90%, sorry, 10-20% of its value. Plus you're paying interest. So you put it on credit card, you're Joe Schmo, working at a convenience store, you're financing a burrito at 32-29% interest. So not only did you lose 10-20% of your buying power, but now you got to pay 30% on that deflated currency that you're buying that burrito with. Yeah.
So yeah, that's how the Federal Reserve works, but you also have government spending. So where the government borrows from the Fed or via bonds, so that money is printed, the government spends the money. But again, it's like Social Security, right? That kind of maybe comes out of tax revenue, right? Tax revenue, Social Security.
It comes out of FICO.
It comes out of whatever.
Yeah, it's still tax. It's taxed on your payroll. Yeah, exactly.
There's no buckets. Yeah. It's just whatever. The government prints the money, and there you are. Yeah. But the point is that when the government spends the money, it's not spent in the real economy. It's spent in their economy, in the coercion sector. This is one of the problems with the fake financial economy, and this is why we call it a kind of fascism. It's hardly different from the USSR. There is difference, all right? The USSR, they say let's go for quotas. In the USA, they say it's still state mandates. The difference is that the USSR they want to do it as cheap as possible using the worst inputs in order to meet those quotas. The USA, they want to do it as expensive as possible, as drawn out as possible, because the government keeps spending, and the money goes to those people in charge, in power. So it's a kleptocracy rather than the incentive there is more to steal the money and extract as much value as possible from the taxpayers, as opposed to the money that's printed, which also steals your purchasing power. Whereas in the USSR, the goods would be of lesser quality because the incentive structure from the ground up is just not there. These are both by decree, both planned economy, whether it's corporates giving it a kind of private wrapper or more directly planned socialism, which they both are. They share the same underlying pathology.
Yeah, very much so. It's definitely crony capitalism at the. One second. It's definitely crony capitalism at its finest. I mean, it is what it is. let me go and pull these. I'm actually we got a comment from DC 2004. He says, I think before World War II, 5% of the government money was responsible for GDP in the U.S. What do you think on that? You're the
I'd have to get the statistics up, but it doesn't sound unreasonable. Again, today it's 34%. Now, there's the US government has three primary government spending. You've got state, federal, and local government. So is that 5% federal, state, local, or the aggregate? 34% today is the aggregate for the USA, per the last time I checked, which is insane. Over a third of the economy. And again, we talk about fake statistics. And this is the thing about GDP. I mean, one can say that a third of the economy is government spending, but maybe another sixth, so maybe over half of the economy is perhaps government directed or adjacent. And especially if you start looking into the corporations and then taxes, it may get even higher than that, the level of distortion.
So the slide that I currently have on is the Baltic Dry Index. And like I said, this is a really good indication to indicate because it's basically consumer spending, and it's a really good way to understand if there's a recession, if we're in a recession, if we came out of recession, or if we're going into a recession. And as you can see from this slide, this is from 92 to 2024. We can see this is 2008, where this huge spike was. As you remember, there was people were buying to infinity, Ninja loans and QE, or not QE, but the CDO market. People were buying houses left and right. You saw The Big Short, where the stripper had like 5 homes and Ninja loans on every single one of her homes, and she was like leasing them out and things of that nature. That was this time. And you can see how it just crashed in 2008. The dry index. This means the consumer spending went to almost zero, or not zero, but I mean it obviously negative GDP growth. So as you can, I'm gonna bring in the next slide here. This is from 2021 to 2025. So 2021 to 2022, we know that this was what period of time? Obviously, it was the lockdowns, and as we can see here. The stimulus money came in 2021, shortly after Trump's exit and Biden's economics, and this stimulated the economy to 2022. This that spike, and then shortly after that money ran out, it started to go back down in 2022. So we saw to 2023. 2023 is when we saw. I'm going to bring this slide up here.
Sorry, can you just explain what the Baltic Dry Index is? Go back to that slide. Just what is this? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so the Baltic Exchange Dry Index is dry goods shipping that's coming from international shipping from other countries to the United States and vice versa in all of the world. This is basically an index of dry goods, like consumer goods, commodities, sugar, all this different stuff, like purchasing things.
Zoom out on that slightly. Click the all map, maybe. Just give it a bit more context on the bottom left. It says 5-year all. I don't know if this is a screenshot or if
it's a screenshot.
Okay, yeah,
it's
all right.
All I'm just showing with this slide is literally this is the 2008 recession that we saw. You can see the huge spike and that from this one here, from the 2008 index.
That was what I was looking for. Yeah,
that's the pump and dump. It crashed, and then it crashed and it bottomed out around 2014. That's when the home prices started to skyrocket. That's you can see that growth, the artificial growth, because this is QE. From 2008 to 2020 was the QE. That was the quantitative easing. That's why it spiked up, but it never recovered from a 2006, 2007. You can see this on the bigger chart here. 2024 is the QE again. That's from the bailouts. And you can see it still didn't spike because the QE from here is 2022, 2023. You can see how they did the stimulus. We were headed into a recession in 2020. And you can see that from this chart. And then there was COVID. They pumped it. And then it dumped down in 2022 after the stimulus came out. and then it started to go down. Let me go to the next slide here. So basically, the moral of the story here is that the U.S. economy experienced a contraction the first half of 2022, as you can see from the slide. 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. What is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, Adam?
Classically, that's a recession. Oh, that's a recession.
So that's a recession in economics. I'm not an economics major. Adam is, or an economics, obviously background in education. So while not officially declared a recession by the National Bureau of Economic Research, the NBER, this organization is one that actually declares. They officially declare recession, like economic data. They didn't declare it, so it was a secret. That's why the whole title of this podcast is super secret, recession, because they didn't declare it as a recession, even though it was.
Well, there was actually, I don't know if people remember, about 3 years ago, right? This was in the news. The news was saying, well, actually a recession is, and they changed the definition. Right? They try to literally redefine what recession is, especially so it wouldn't hurt the election cycle.
Correct.
But facts on the ground: two negative quarters of GDP growth. That's a recession. And Josh is making the argument we are in one again.
Yeah, and I'll break that down next. So basically, that's 1984 George Orwellian doublespeak. Up is down, down is up. Two consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth is not a recession. A recession doesn't exist. We don't have that. So it's just they're making shit up as they go along, basically.
And that is the underlying pathology behind government, right? Fiat, authority by decree. Whatever we say is. For example, the person that's in the news that, I'm not going to say his name, I don't know, but he never existed.
Exactly.
And the Trump administration is the most fair and transparent administration ever. They would never lie to you.
Oh, never. So here's the kicker. Currently, I said that we would start to see the beginnings of the recession the first quarter of 2025. You guys can go back in my podcast. I said it on live air. I said it on the pod many times. I made that prediction, so it's not like I'm making the shit up today. We were going to see negative GDP growth in the first quarter of 2025, and guess what we did? We had negative GDP growth. Now we're at the end of the second quarter, where the data has not come out yet. It will come out in end of July here. Pretty soon, it's going to come out. I can guarantee you, it's July 11th, 2025. On the Liberty Report with Adam Maxwell and Professor Red Pill, I can guarantee that next data that's going to come out, it's going to indicate negative GDP growth for the second quarter of 2025. And I said that we would hit recession by summer. Did I not, Adam?
Yes, you've said these.
Yes. So when those numbers come out,
which I think is in July 30th.
Yeah, it'll come out at the end of the month. When those numbers come out, it'll be a bank holiday, and they're just gonna I see nothing, I know nothing from Hogan's Heroes, like that, just media. The media. Some journalists are gonna ask in the White House briefing, "Hey, so we have 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. Are we in a recession?" I see nothing, I know nothing. It's gonna be like that, and then they're just probably gonna be a war with Iran or something like that, or bank holiday, or they'll make some shit up. They'll have some kind of new thing. To divert the truth and reality.
Just to reground everyone, so the first quarter of GDP, the first quarter USA, it contracted at 0.3%. So it contracted.
That's negative GDP growth. That's a recession. That's the first step. First
so
month,
you're predicting that we will find out the data in 3 weeks.
This next, because you can look. Yeah, bringing up the dry good index, you can see here where you see that at the end of it, this is 2025 first quarter. You see that that indicates recession, or not recession, but that indicates the negative GDP growth, the retraction that we saw from the numbers that you just described. If you can see that. and you can see how it's going down here towards the end. This is recent updated as of like last week, so you can see that it's starting to go down a little bit. I don't think there's going to be a I think we're going to have negative. I think we're going to have probably like worse numbers than last quarter or about the same. There won't be any growth, and that's what I'm thinking is happening. I think we're going to see a recession.
Okay,
I think we're in the recession.
So we're in a recession. So what? Well, you think we're in a recession? We'll see. But so what? Like, what does GDP matter?
Well, that's why I'm bringing up this slide here. So the last time, basically we're going to get into what a double dip recession is. So what is a double dip recession, Adam Maxwell? Because we've only had it once in the history of the United States and the Western economy. What exactly is a double dip recession?
Sounds like a recession twice.
Yeah,
when a recession slides back to another recession after a quarter of two of positive growth.
Correct.
It's like a double top. You know, the price goes and then it goes again. So double dips, kind of like a W on the chart.
So what does that look like to you? Does that look like a W to you?
Well, a lot of markets, the structure it tends to look like that. You know, that there's price structure. As you can see, the 2023 it went down, and in 2025 it went down, but not as much, which could mean that means it's more probable to go up than down. If you had a lower low, that's like panic, but it's a marginally higher low, which when you look at this indicates the structure.
This is forming a W though. You could see in 2023, which is the official recession that didn't happen. And we're in 2025, the recession that is, of course, not going to happen. It's double secret recession.
Yeah, if you define that 1,000 as a key level of significance, and you say, well, it went below the 1,000, bounced on it in 2023, and then 2025 it bounced back below the 1,000. That may be significant. It may be that it winds up again. It goes up to the 3,500 and back down. And that kind of, you know, what you're looking for in a kind of normal pattern is three pulses. So up, down, you make a structure. It pulses up to the key level of significance, 3,000. It goes back down. It's made a higher low. Okay, this is normal. It tends to go back up again, meets kind of some trend line, and then you want it to go back down again. But what you find is if you do have a pattern like a double bottom or a double dip recession, as you're saying, that is what we would call a reversal indicator. So if the trend, especially on the macro scale, if the macro trend has been growth and growth and growth per the GDP, and if this structure turns out to be a double bottom, which, you know, this is forecasting. You say, well, based on what I can see, it looks to be something, but you have to wait through time for that pattern to print and then validate the theory. And it's important to know that your theory may be valid and even probable. Then something changes and the pattern changes, and then you can say, but based on, you know, factors that have changed, my forecast now changes too. And that's what prediction is. And you may have been entirely correct in your prediction here, but I think the important thing is if you're married to a prediction as opposed to married to what the chart says, that's where you're going to be wrong. But certainly it seems that your theory is viable, and we shall see. And it's impossible to know now whether or not it is absolute. And you're not arguing that. You're saying, based on the data, this is how I see it. This is how I see things.
Correct. Yeah, like I said, we don't know that we're in a recession until after. So until the numbers come out, I'm just predicting that we are in recession. We can feel that we're in recession. You go on TikTok, you go on social media, you ask the Zoomers, you ask the YGens, they're saying we're in recession. They're like, dude, I can't pay rent. I got to put my taco on.
This is the other thing. What does it matter about the GDP? Liberal democratic regimes care deeply because GDP is their fictional proxy for legitimacy. Growth defined by decree. Under communism, this was done by quotas, right? We need this many tons of steel. Excellent. And then they manipulate the figures to get there. We need this much wheat. Doesn't matter the quality. Production units. In the West, our GDP is consumer spending, healthcare bloat, debt-financed wars. It's the same metrics, fake decree, different cosmetics. Arguably,
surplus versus demand. Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, one is distorted by quotas, which cares not for quality. The other is subsidies, which distorts price, which affects quality. They both obey state fiat and not the market law. And this is what I was saying, that like in the Soviet Union, it's about you need to meet their targets. So the quality of the output can be trash. In America, you still need to meet their targets, but you can inflate the cost. You're not serving value, but plan, which means it's not capitalism. This is the state-defined economy, whether it wears a hammer or a dollar sign. It's just a private label for a command economy, obeying political fiat, not consumer sovereignty. And this is really where the problem is. And we've talked about this repeatedly in our podcast, which is to do with what actually matters is not the inflation of state fiat, but the underlying, what does it mean for the individual? So we've talked about how I wear one pair of boots about every day. This pair of boots cost me like 1.5, 2 times the price of a regular pair of shoes. I wear it every day. I wear it until it runs out. It's very high quality, durable, waterproof, got good traction, etc. I can go I don't have to worry about walking in puddles. This is, that benefits my life. I don't stub my toe. Whereas, in the USSR or whatever, it's like we need 100 pairs of shoes. The quality doesn't really matter. So it can be falling apart, it could be whatever. But the point is, in the GDP figure, even if I went through 3 pairs of shoes, and that would be a higher measure, a higher GDP, a greater statistic than this one pair that lasts and is durable. And it comes down to it comes down to the distortion of the markets. So the markets aren't serving the economy. This fake economy isn't serving the customer because it's not led by the market. If customers want durable goods, the market incentivizes durability. We have a big problem of planned obsolescence and inferior quality because of the state distorted markets, including IP law, subsidies, central bank inflation. And so a lot of these outcomes are not free market, but created by monopolists in bed with the state.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's awesome how you broke that down. I mean, I think we're in a history repeated pattern with the Reagan economics because Trump is trying to use the same playbooks as Reagan, and that's why I want to bring up this next slide. Let me see. Hold on. Did I bring it up?
Yeah.
There it is. So the last double dip recession in the United States occurred during the early 1980s, and of course, what happened in the early 1980s? What happened in the 1970s? Mad Max. Adam.
This was the stagflation, the oil crisis 50 years ago, right, when the Arabs attacked Israel and there was a war, and then the OPEC retaliated and said, no more oil, USA. Big energy crisis caused massive cost push inflation. And at the same time, output reduced. Consequently, stagflation, where prices are going up and output is reducing. It's kind of a double whammy, and living standards reduced. And this is why GDP matters. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics, but statistics do still measure something in an objective population. So I can rally against the worship of GDP, but there is still some value in there. So, and the proxy value is GDP is supposed to measure average living standards.
Correct. And I mean that's the thing with the dry good index. Why, like, you look at this, I tell you to look at the dry good index, look at gas and oil prices, because gas and oil prices are going to indicate what the travel, what, because the thing is energy is an indicator of growth. Energy is an indicator of products moving from point A to point B, construction, building, all of this jazz. So if oil prices are going down, especially when there was a 12-day conflict in the Middle East, I mean, like, they were threatening to basically blockade the oil that represents nearly 30 to 40% of like the global supply. And
I
it
thought
didn't
it was
even
20%. It could be 30, 40. It could be. Yeah.
It's something like that. It's like 20 or 30%, but it's 50% of China's oil revenue, or
So
oil
one of the first
energy
things
sector. Yeah.
one of the first things you learn in economics in high school, if you study it, or Econ 101, is that output is the same as income is the same as production. Right? It's an equation. O is equivalent to I is equivalent to Y. All these things are GDP if you apply it to a national economy. In physics, energy has another name. Do you know what that is? It's 4 letters, begins with W.
Ooh. I don't have the foggiest.
Work.
What is it?
So
Work.
energy
Okay.
is also work and work done. So when you talk about the importance of energy in measuring the economy, yeah, energy is work, is a function of work. So the economy, you can look at energy as a maybe even as a better proxy for output, because activity requires energy, and
Correct.
there you have,
Yeah. I mean,
As
we produce
opposed-
as humans. Yeah, as humans, we produce energy. We consume food to produce that energy. So when we're not working, and we're not working as hard, we're not eating as much, we're not consuming as much. So that's also a factor. There's a lot of at the end of the day, energy prices, dry good index are really good indicators to let you know what the economy is doing. There's the PPP, I think it's what it's called. They don't use GDP, but
purchasing power parity, which is just to say a dollar goes further in Nepal than it does in America.
Correct. The PPP is important for indicating trade. So I use these 3 metrics, and I'm not an economist, but I am a policy expert, and I use these 3 metrics and kind of understanding what's going on geopolitically, what's going on with trade, and what's going on regionally, and nation, and world as a whole, a global economy. Because I focus on the global economy, not on the United States economy. We have a lot of followers that are from all over the world that watch and view the Liberty Report, and view various podcasts that I produce, that you produce, and members of our channels. So that's the reason. There's a reason for that, because we're talking about everybody. We're talking about a lot of different people, a lot of different regions, a lot of different trade areas. So the moral story is what I'm getting to kind of break it down simply for the normal, the like average person to understand. The dry shipping index generally indicates what's the purchasing power, what are people consuming, are consumers buying, and the energy determines, is commerce producing products, are they producing a supply, is there a supply chain, is there a supply and demand, obviously. So supply is the dry index, and demand is the energy, and then the PPP is the trade between that. So because obviously we're in a global society or global economy. So the PPP is important because China is trading widgets to America, and Saudi Arabia is selling oil to China to produce those widgets for America. So when you put all of this together, you can indicate if there's a global recession coming, or if there's a regional recession, and so on and so forth, from those 3 major indicators. And it's very accurate. That's why I really when I give these predictions of my analysis, I read different white papers, government stuff, NGO documents, and a lot of different stuff. And I use these 3 different metrics, and I'm usually pretty accurate. And I get usually pretty close to the timetable of when these things are going to happen. Not financial advice, but it's just kind of letting you guys know where the trends are going. And I'm usually pretty close, about 98% correct most of the time. Go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I wanted to say that what we're doing here is real analysis, a rejection of the fiat narratives or the authority narratives, what the government want. So GDP, again, it may have some value, but really it's a myth almost of it is a myth as a sign of national prosperity. Yeah. It is a statist and neoliberal metric, not a true measure of wealth, value, or freedom. Not only do we have distortion in the statistics, not only do we have problems with government spending, but we also have problems with one of the critical distinctions between, say, the American and Russian, Chinese economies, which all have their own problems, okay? But one of the biggest problems is that one of the biggest distinguish. Sure.
One of the things to notice with PPP, when you compare PPP to China and Russia, like China in particular, PPP, the PPP growth in China compared to the United States is astronomical. I mean, it's dwarfed just in the last decade alone.
And three decades as well.
Oh, when you start putting that larger metric in, I mean, it's unbelievable. But just in the 10-year period, I mean, this is why I'm like, United States collapse, #collapse 2025, because like it's just, I think China has overtaken the United States geopolitically as far as global trade.
Sure, and for all of human history, for China has been, with international trade, has been a set, like, not only a center of the world, but this is actually what the Chinese call their own country, Zhuanghuo, Middle Kingdom, or the center of the world. The other problem, the distinction is that Russia and China, again, they have problems with their economies, as everyone does, but they are what I would describe as real economies, as opposed to the United States, which is, I said, a more of a financialized shell. Even the USA, even the military figures are admitting that in 3 months, Russia is able to outproduce not just the USA militarily, but the entire NATO in 3 months. And then you can look at like ammunition for certain things, and it's actually they can produce more in 1 month than everyone in a whole year. So part of this, and a large part of this, is to do with financialization, stock buybacks and subsidies, which as well as offshoring, which has hollowed out the real economy of the United States and the West. And this, again, fuels that deception behind growth, and especially the stagnation since 2008. And 2008 was such a watershed moment for the financialization of the economy, because if the government did not bail everyone out, we may have seen a much healthier economy. But instead, they bailed all the banks out, rewarded their behavior, and have doubled down and pumped, no brakes, pump, especially ever since then.
I mean, you saw the slide, right? You saw the peak in 2007. We all saw it, where the huge growth, the artificial growth through the CDO and through the fake money that got pushed into the economy. And it's never, no matter how much QE, how many trillions of dollars, Trump, Obama, Biden, Trump again, Trump outspent himself again. That Lupiter predicted, and it was a big joke, but it's actually the truth. And it's never retracted back to where it was in 2007. And yet the currency, you know what I mean? When you think about that, it's like,
what has never?
I'll give you a simple explanation of that. You have a house worth $100,000. It sells for $400,000 in 2008, right? Or 2007 before the crash. You fast forward to 2000. Right. So the currency has deflated by 30 to 40% just from 2008 to 2025, right? Give or take.
I would have thought just in the past 5 years.
Probably more. Probably, yeah, last 5 years. So anyway, you deflated the currency, let's say 30%, right? So that means that house should be worth 30% more than 400,000 that sold at the peak in 2007. So you add 30% to that, and that would just match that 2007 level.
That would be just purchasing power alone. Then you've also got
correct.
Supply and demand.
That would the PPP. That's the PPP. So that would literally just be even. Add 30% to 400,000, and that would mean you're straight even with the PPP. Okay. We go to fast forward to 2023, 23 or 22 or whatever they stimulated through the stimulus, right? After COVID relief. The highest it went was 250, maybe 300,000 max. And with the 30% inflation, right? So that means it's probably, what, 150,000? That means it has never recovered. That means that since the 2008 crash, the economy has still yet to recover from the 2008 crash.
Okay,
Because
I wanted to go
are
down
you
this
following me?
line, but I think a much easier way to look at it is if you look at productivity. Now,
Okay.
when I was in school, I started doing economics at school in 2014, 15, and they were
Okay.
talking about the productivity crisis. Why in Canada and the UK is there a productivity crisis? And indeed, you look at productivity growth for Canada, UK, you can get up the chart. You'll see it's a fairly constant, whatever the slope is, until 2008. And then it's kind of flatlined since, to the point that productivity today is still not at 2008 levels, as you said, specifically UK and Canada. In the USA, there was actually productivity growth, and America got more wealthy than from 2008 till 2020. And then there was this pump for 2 years, and then there's been on a downward trajectory kind of since then, especially if you consider more than just GDP. The point is to say that, of course, there's a productivity crisis in the UK and Canada, because what's happened is there hasn't been real growth. It's been financialization. And again, the peak of financialization, the benefit 2008. So financialization's gone to, a hot place in a handbasket. The UK and Canada are not as rich as they were in 2008. And we also have the distortion of the economy where, the ruling classes are importing foreign labor in order to distort the lowest wage earners. Policies done to extract value, give it to the ruling classes. Point is that income distribution, not through the market, but through the coercion, through the government, is extractive to the top, as well as not just inflating the value on the bottom, but actually plundering it by importing foreign labor to work at a lower cost.
Correct. So just looking at the chart here to kind of like simplify what you're saying. 2006, 2007, you could see that it topped to 10,000, right? And you could fast forward to 2021, 22, and it didn't even reach 6,000. That means that there's a deficit of 4,000 or 5,000. You see what I'm saying? Points. That's half.
I messed
Literally
with
half.
the layout. Sorry, I was trying to help.
No, just leave it the way it was. Hold on. Yeah, that's fine. So if you look, you can see it's 10,000, right? You see it actually hit 11. It hit close to 12,000 in 2007. This is the Baltic Dry Index. This is just consumer spending. And it dropped tremendously. And it never recovered because this has been QE since 2007. I think they stopped QE in around 2014.
There was another round in 2015. I think it was another round kind of 2018. And then 2020 was QE infinity. I think they
2020 was the crash. That was the crash. That was the recession we were seeing. We could see that recession there by 2020.
So the recession was, of course, 2020, but they kept, but the Fed and the Bank of England and the central banks around the world, but they pumped and tried to stimulate not the real economy. You can't stimulate the real economy by shutting everyone in their homes. They stimulated the GDP figures by inflating and throwing money into the financial sector.
Correct. Yeah. So, long story short, I give you $10. It crashes down to like $1. So I give you $10. I take $9. You're left with $1, and then I give you back like $3 more to get it to $4. Then I take back the $3, so you're back down to $1, and then I'll give you $4 more to get to $5, and then I just take it away back down to $1 again. So literally the highest point was like $10, $11, right? And that was in '08. We're talking '08. We're '07. We're in 2025. We're literally almost 20 years from the peak of the American economy and the global economy for that matter, 2007. 2 more years will be 20 years. And we have yet to return to that $10 ratio from this chart. Ever. And it'll never happen again. Under fiat, never again. You'll never see this growth, this artificial growth, this pump and dump growth, this like BlackRock quantitative, easing quadruple, CDO to, whatever. You'll never see this ever again until the fiat all crashes. Ever again.
The problem is that the economy is fake. That they want.
That's all it is. It's fake and gay.
Growth for growth's sake. It's a fake financial economy. They're not like firms are not reinvesting in productive capital. Instead, they are spending their profits on dividends, stock buybacks, and paper gains. So since 2008, it is that the real economy has been stagnant, and you can look. The best metric for that is not GDP but productivity, and this is also a good one as it measures actual quantity of goods coming in and trade. But productivity has been flat. The investment is fake, and the inflation is real. We don't have capitalism. It's a cartel state where the Fed is fueling zombie corporations to inflate asset bubbles, and they're calling that growth.
I'm gonna pull up a chart for productivity to see if I can get it up here for you real quick, so we can look at that as well. Let me do that. There we go. Overall U.S. productivity, manufacturing sector productivity, labor productivity. So you're right. Here's the 2008. You saw the dip in '08. Both of them dipped, and then overall U.S. labor productivity went up. But of course, that's the foreign labor.
Yeah, you can see that American manufacturing has kind of either stagnated. It's slightly higher than it was, but
it went down. You can see it's
100. This is how good things were in 2005. You look at 2008, it's like 105. Today, it's still 108 or so. So it's 3% higher than it was 2 decades ago, which is bad. Right? That's not growth. And it's decreased from 2013, but it's slightly higher than 2008. But importantly, if you look at not just US labor productivity, but you look at UK and Canada, and you compare it to the US as well, you will see that actually the US, especially labor productivity, has gone up like that. And one of the, again, there's many factors, but one of the key inputs into wages is, of course, labor productivity. So labor productivity is a much better metric to showcase how good Americans have things, because it's a better show of how much their wages than GDP per capita. But if you compare UK and Canada versus the US, they don't have that growth like America does, because America, we criticize America and we call them out rightfully, but there are some, America,
they have small business.
They have benefits.
Small business growth.
They do have small businesses. They do have natural resources. In theory, America was always destined to be a superpower. It's got the people. It's got the natural resources. It's got 2 massive oceans.
Geography too. Yeah, definitely. It's got a lot to do with it.
Right. The problem is not the values of the American Republic. The problem is the government. The problem is the governance. The problem is the distortion and the BS and the planned economy. And this is what ultimately destroyed the USSR. It was the planned economy overtaking things. The military spending. They say, well, the USSR was printing guns, not bread and butter. Well, you look at America. Not only are they spending over $1 trillion on the military, not counting Pentagon and hidden spending, but They're spending over $1 trillion just financing the debt that they've accumulated exclusively through military adventurism. And that military adventurism, it wasn't, it's adventurism. It's not for their national interest. It's hardly even for their imperial interests. It's and Julian Assange talks about this a lot. It's not about winning a war. It's about having forever war so that they can continue to extract and plunder. And that extraction and plunder, so the debt spending, that over $1 trillion plus the military spending, that's both military spending really. So it's over $2 trillion every year, and this is what brought down the USSR.
I see you got your century spending for 1925 to 2025. This was the question that came up for.
This was the question that came back earlier. DC.
Yeah, sorry. There it is, DC. I think before WW2, World War II, obviously, 5% of the government money was
3%,
responsible for GDP.
Yeah. It was like 3%. I think the revenues at one point I saw was like 8% at one point. I'm not sure when that was. But so what I'm saying is when you look at that non-defense spending, I'm telling you that actually you have to double the defense and cut it off, because that non-defense spending or the interest, the interest really is defense.
1940, there was a freaking World War going on. So, I mean, obviously defense spending is going to be quite high. And they were spending money on the Manhattan Project was equivalent. It was equivalent to 1% of the US GDP at the time. Could you imagine that?
I thought it was higher.
No, it's about 1%. That's what the estimate was. It could be higher. I don't know. But what I understand the statistical fact was 1% of GDP.
Mm-hmm.
They spent more on the Manhattan Project than they did on NASA, apparently.
Well, they dropped 2 bombs in Japan and turned them into anime lovers.
And then you have the non-defense, but this non-defense is this like also civilian contractors? Is this technically still defense?
Yeah, that's what I would say. Well, some of it will be. This is what I was saying with the 33%, 50%. Some of the non-defense is defense, but also a lot of that non-defense. We talked about it in either the last one before the podcast is just welfare and
right. And we got that here. Let me see. We got healthcare.
This is the Cato Institute, by the way, whom I'm not a big fan of, but
it's a very liberal, or not liberal, but conservative, somewhat conservative.
Yeah, but it's like a neoconservative. It's a regime conservative.
Yeah. Numbers look good though. I mean, the numbers look pretty accurate. So I mean, I'm not gonna hold them to that. I'm an academic, so like as long as the numbers are good, I don't care what their agenda is. I can read the numbers and the data, and I can kind of formulate my own ideas. But yeah, I mean, the reality is like outside of defense spending, because the thing is, defense spending still is GDP growth. It still creates jobs. It still creates industry and innovation. So I'm not completely against defense spending, but I mean, when you're spending money on defense and you don't show any productivity for it, because I mean, like for instance, like NASA, like we have what is it, the memory foam? That's NASA invention, microwave NASA invention. A lot of stuff that they invested in innovation was applied to the commercial market because obviously NASA. Yeah, NASA's a semi-private organization, so like they literally get their funding through innovation, through creating products and selling them patenting them and selling them to the public. Yeah.
There's a very famous 19th century essay by Bastiat called "That Which Is Seen and That Which Is Unseen," and his paradigm was the broken window fallacy. It says if you go around smashing people's windows, people have to spend money on the window repair or window maker.
That's a mafia style. Yeah.
No, the point is that stimulates the economy, right? But he says no, because you would have otherwise had that money to spend on more productive things. When a country burns down and rebuilds, GDP goes up. Is that growth or tragedy?
It's tragedy.
But it's decay measured in dollars.
I will like, and I'm not gonna be cause I'm an anti-war guy. I'm not like, I don't believe in war and stuff like that. I think it's all bankers' money and profit shit. But at the devil's advocate here, a lot of the great inventions, even what the platform we're using right now, the stuff that you guys are watching us from home and on your devices, this was invented by the defense. It was invented by the military, the internet. This was a platform that they used, that they invented, so they could communicate with each other in case there's a nuclear fallout, so that communications, because it started in the university and then defense, and then so that basically the government can communicate with each other in case there's a nuclear wipeout or some kind of like power grid shutdown. And we use it now as a commercial space. So this is, just like airplanes and rockets and a lot of the stuff that we use, fiber optics, a lot of this stuff came from defense. It came from government spending. I mean, I'm not an advocate of government. Obviously it's a Liberty Report. We're libertarian on this side, but the government does spend money. They do come up with creative, inventive things, and there is a commercial or a consumer based need for that. Just like the iPhone, it completely revolutionized the industry, the telecommunications industry. But I still don't think, it is what it is. You what are your thoughts, Adam, on that?
Look, the government can do good, but it's like if you roll down the hill, if you roll down a cliff, you might land on a bush every once in a while, and maybe it's kind of nice. I don't know, maybe that's kind of nice and soft, but you're still rolling down a cliff, and you're going to end up bloody, bruised, and beaten. And you could just walk down and sit on the nice bush yourself. This is what private property, voluntary exchange, and market pricing. That's capitalism. And that you're going to, like, the question is the internet a government invention or an inevitability that the government managed to bring forth first? I think the latter. Neoliberalism is this financialization, central banking, and global regulatory control.
Correct.
Rule by interest blocks and this crony capture of state and market. That's what this mixed economy, state capitalism, hybrid, it's not a free market. The common thread is that state fiat determines production, not market demand.
Yeah, well put. I think we'll leave it at that. I mean, other than the BBB, we went over it in the previous podcast. It didn't look too bad, but the only thing is it added. Okay, I'm just saying, like, it added what, $2 trillion to the national debt, something like that. I think it was like $1 trillion or $2 trillion. Basically, it was like, we're going to do tax cuts, but then we're going to add $2 trillion for defense spending and all this other BS. We're going to cut benefits to everybody. That was what people didn't like.
My final point, and we're not going to have time to go into it, but is people say, well, look at the Russian economy. Is that going to contract? And it's a war economy, etc. And it's like, okay, are you worshipping the statistic, or are you looking at the real situation? Is their GDP growing? Does that even matter? It does matter, right? GDP is a reflection of standards, kind of. But if they're fighting an existential war, what would you rather, win a war or achieve a 2% GDP growth rather than a minor contraction, whatever that means? Would you like the economy to shrink by 1 or 2% and you win the war, or the GDP is growing? Obviously, it's better to do kind of both. And the Russian Minister of Defense is an economist. They said, attrition war, economist, you go in. They changed that out the last couple of years. So the point is that, if you're worshipping GDP as a golden calf, it's foolish. But if you're looking at the real economy, you're saying, well, actually, they're producing, the quality is going up, the benefits are there, and they're actually focused on winning an existential war. I don't care if the GDP is going to go down a little bit. It does matter. You don't want people starving. But they're not. There's plenty of food. Like, it's an autarkic, not entirely, but it's a more autarkic society than Europe, for example, which doesn't have energy production because it doesn't have just geography. It doesn't have the natural resources.
Yeah, and well put. And like I said, we'll leave that as a cliffhanger for our next podcast, and definitely we will retackle that and go into that and break it down further. But yeah, I mean, basically, what I'm predicting is that we're not really predicting. I'm just saying, I'm analyzing. I'm saying we're probably in a recession right now, and that I'm predicting that basically the government, there will be official numbers to say that we are in recession. But again, the whole title of the podcast is Devil's Secret Probation. So literally, it's going to be a secret, and no one's going to know. And anybody who's not go ahead.
Mine is economic cancer.
Yeah, economic cancer. Yeah. So I mean, anyone who's not an academic or at least halfway follows this kind of stuff or watches this podcast for that matter, will have no clue what's going on. They'll just be like, dude, I'm gotta finance my burrito from, Chipotle for like 4 easy payments, or something.
All right,
like
guys.
30%.
Thank you for tuning in. Follow
Yeah.
us on Telegram, Rumble, Locals, YouTube. I think that's it.
Yeah,
Tune in for the
we're
next
on a
one.
lot of platforms right now. But yeah, just follow us with links in the description for the Telegram groups, Liberty Rising group, as well as Gonzalo Legacy group, and the Professor Red Pill official is all in the links. Like, subscribe, join locals, $4 a month. Rumble 3 gets you $3 your first month's rent, or first month's membership rather. Throw us some shekels, man. Like, you can even just donate $1 if you wanted to. Yeah, take care, guys. And we'll see you next week on the Liberty Report.